Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. I'd like to welcome in my next guest here, Peter Neronha, Democratic candidate for Attorney General. Thank you for joining us again.
Yes, Kate, good to see you.
As you've been out on the trail, we've pulled you off for a brief moment here to come into studio to give us an update, both what you're seeing and hearing from Rhode Islanders around the state. And we're going to talk probably some local and national issues as well. So you had a couple interesting meetings this week.
Yeah, I did. I sat down with somebody who is interested in doing reentry work here in Rhode Island from a national nonprofit, and I think that's really critically important work. When I was U.S. Attorney, we took a three-pronged approach to violent crime. One was try to obviously prevent as much crime as you could by getting young people a chance to stay out of crime, focusing our efforts on those truly driving violent crime, and then making sure that when people got out of the prison, they were back into the workforce fast, because that prevents them from reoffending, and we're just in a much better place if we can manage that. And there's a national group that wants to come in and do some of that work, so really excited to hear about that. I think we need to invest more there, frankly, with probation and parole. We need to make investments there, because they're the ones who help returning citizens succeed. That was great. I sat yesterday as well with somebody who is interested in drug policy here in Rhode Island. I had some candid conversations around Kristen's law. Been a lot of controversy about that, sort of where I come out on that. So, yeah, a lot of good conversations, policy conversations, part of the campaign. Great to meet Rhode Islanders all over the state about the issues they care about.
Let's talk a little bit about Kristen's law, because we had several individuals in here on it as well. As you said, lots of different voices in the debate. What do you say to those folks who do have the concerns about the sort of chilling effect? Obviously, there are other families that have been, and the communities obviously impacted by the opioid crisis. But those who said that went too far, what do you say to those folks?
Yeah, look, a lot of those folks I've had dealings with. Jody Rich and I collaborated on some good work when I was U.S. Attorney, and Peter Friedman's another one who signed that letter, to legislative leaders about that bill. Here's what I say. Certainly when that bill first came out as requiring a life sentence, I didn't think that was the right way to proceed. Now that it's up to a life sentence, doesn't mean it will be a life sentence. That's an important distinction. There's a carve out for the Good Samaritans. It has to be something of value exchanged. But I think what it comes down to me is, do we trust the discretion of our prosecutors? And as somebody who exercises discretion every day as U.S. Attorney, I think we have to trust that discretion. I understand, though, the skepticism, and I think the way to address that is to continue to talk to people about the statute, continue to talk as we use it, and I really think that the number of times it gets used ought to be pretty limited, right? For me, it gets used in the circumstances where you have a significant drug trafficker who knows what they're dealing, that it may contain fentanyl, which is the real killer here, is not addicted, him or herself, doesn't have a relationship with a victim. So we're really talking about using that, I think, in a relatively limited, narrow scope of cases. So hopefully, as it gets used, and in some instances not used, the confidence in how we use our discretion increases. But I understand the skepticism, and I think you can't reject it. You have to understand it exists and do your best to try to overcome it.
So let's talk a little bit about the role of AG, and let's talk a little bit about health policy as well, sort of maybe the intersection of them both. What we found out this week, numbers for UHIP burgeoning up now to $647 million. Now this is obviously the combination of state and federal tax dollars. Right. It originally was $119 million under Link Chafee. Folks are very concerned about these numbers and how it got to be this way. I mean, does there need to be an investigation?
Well, just as I was leaving as United States Attorney, if you remember, there were the office opened an investigation into Deloitte and sort of how the federal money was used. So, I can't talk about why we opened it or what we were doing when I left. I don't know where it stands now that I'm gone. Certainly there ought to be an evaluation as to how we went from where we thought we were going to be to where we are today. Without sort of defending any of that, I do know, for example, when I became U.S. Attorney, I was on a committee, I was on the Attorney General's Advisory Committee, and one of the things we were dealing with was a case management system that we were trying to bring online. We couldn't bring it online, and it cost $60 million, and you just have to decide, are you going to pull the plug on $60 million, or do you keep going? So this replicates itself around the country. So certainly some analysis of what happened here is warranted. I think the bigger issue, and you've reported on it, is making sure that the people who need benefits get them, right? We're talking about some of Rhode Island's most vulnerable people, and we've got to make sure that they have access to the benefits that they need.
And you raise the point, clearly the ACLU has issued, they have taken legal action for that very reason. So because of that, because of the folks not receiving them in the timely manner of that legal nature, does it then fall under the purview of the Attorney General from a legal standpoint to, again, as you said, you want an evaluation, but if there's legal recourse here for the Attorney General to get involved.
Well, there may be. I mean, as I said, one of our hook when I was U.S. Attorney was the fact that the federal money paid for a huge portion of this program. The question when you're whether you're the AG or the U.S. Attorney is, on the civil side and on the criminal side as well. This doesn't strike me as a criminal matter. Were there lies? Were there misrepresentations? Were things promised that shouldn't have been promised? And then sort of following up on that. But again, I always come back to this thing's got to get fixed. We've got to get the benefits to the people who use them. But yeah, there's no question that this has been a millstone around state government here now for far too long.
Okay, so wouldn't go as far to call for investigation, but an evaluation.
Yeah, look, I think like anything, right? I hope to be the next Attorney General. I don't know that I'm going to get there yet. I'm working hard to try to get there. I don't want to prejudge anything, and so I think you have to be careful about saying we need an investigation without knowing all the facts. I will say this, when I was U.S. Attorney, there was enough there that we felt like we ought to take a look at it, and we started that process. Where that is in the federal side, I don't know at the moment.
And let's talk about something else that is under the spotlight currently, and of course this is the St. Joseph's Pension Fund bankruptcy. It's moving through the receivership system now, but let's also talk as well. General Treasurer Seth Magaziner has proposed legislation moving forward for more transparency, he said. But what of this particular case and these retirees? Is this something that the AG should be looking into?
No, it's the same answer, right? Two issues. The first one is I understand what it's like to live on a pension like that, because I had an aunt who lived on a 15-year cook's helper's pension at URI, right? She lived into her 90s. She didn't have children. My brother and I and my sister were like children to her. So I know, from my own experience with my aunt, that people who are living on a small pension really count on it. They really count on it. So that's the thing that's most incredibly troubling about it. You talked about the Treasurer's goal of making those pension systems transparent, because since they're not ERISA plans, people don't know many times what's in them. So part of it is understanding the problem, calling for more transparency, both generally and of course now we know what went on there. In terms of the investigation, again, it's the same question, right? Were there misrepresentations made, whether that be to the regulators, including the AG, or to others, right? And I think sometimes that comes out in the civil case. When I was U.S. Attorney, there would often be a civil action, and we might meet with some of the parties in a civil action or thinking about them to see whether or not there was something there for us on the criminal side or the civil side of the office to take a look at. Again, hard to prejudge until a lot more information comes out. Certainly it would be something that I'd be interested in reviewing were I the Attorney General, but without having the information, it's hard to say exactly where that would land.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about national issues that might pertain to Rhode Island. We've seen folks here. Let's talk about the new makeup of the Supreme, but potential new makeup of the Supreme Court. There's a lot of concern here, obviously, with Roe v. Wade and what could potentially happen in D.C.
Sure.
As Attorney General, we're seeing a lot on the side of folks legislatively wanting to get back in and codify protections here. What's your take on the role of the AG in this debate?
Well, I'm not sure the AG has a role there, but I will say this: I do think we should do that. I think given where this court is going, given where this president, the president has a litmus test. He stated that he has a litmus test on overturning Roe v. Wade. Given that, and given the state of the law in Rhode Island, whereas if you go back and look at where the state of the law is in Rhode Island, so for example, as I understand it, as the law currently stands, you would need spousal notification for a woman to exercise her right to an abortion. So there are lots of laws on the books that need to get fixed in light of the fact of where this president seems to be going with the Supreme Court choice. Now, we're going to have to wait and see as the Senate confirmation hearings play out whether this particular nominee lands. But again, the president has made enough statements during the campaign as to the kinds of judges he wants on the bench that he seems to be using a litmus test. And I think that's something that we should be concerned about, that I'm concerned about.
And another thing on the national level that we've seen, especially this week, is states versus federal oversight taking a look into the printing of 3D guns. We saw Pennsylvania try to take a look at it, but something certainly in the national debate. Do you think this will be handled at the federal level? Do you think the states will have any say in this?
Well,
do you think there'll be any oversight?
Well, there needs to be oversight. You hear about that issue, to me it's a common sense issue. And we can talk about the First Amendment. I heard the gentleman who who is putting these blueprints on the web talk about, First Amendment rights. And look, the First Amendment's a critical part of our Constitution, a critical part of who we are as a nation, but you've got to bring some common sense to it. When I was U.S. Attorney, we had cases where you couldn't buy a machine gun, but you could buy all the parts online. And I remember having cases where you could buy all the parts and all you needed was a drill press to make a machine gun, right? So we've got to bring common sense to this issue. And common sense to me is that these guns have to be regulated. You certainly don't want to make it easier for somebody who wants to do harm to evade detection, whether it be at an airport or a courthouse or any other institution where there's a metal detector for a reason. So yeah, this is a cause for real concern. And again, we're going from 0 to 100 almost overnight, right? They weren't being published. The federal government was fighting it. All of a sudden, they've settled it almost without notice, and it's a mad rush to try to get something in place. I think this is why, frankly, Kate, that attorneys general around the country are more important than they ever were, because in this case and many others, it's AGs that are going to court to stop or at least slow down some of these, I think, rash decisions that could impact all of us in a really negative way.
And so finally, I do have to ask you, because you're here in downtown Providence, these bird scooters that are on the street,
Right.
put on the lawyer hat. I can't let you out because I have a top legal mind here that have the things that say you must wear a helmet, you must be 18, GoLocal has covered this, and we've seen
Right.
that that's not the case. If someone gets hurt or worse, is this going to be an issue?
Well, I think it is, and I think as a practical matter. Look, as somebody who has kids, as adult kids, what do you do? What do you tell your kids when they go on a bicycle, right? Put a helmet on, right? I have friends who ride motorcycles. You have to put a helmet on. So yeah, I think that's again one of those things that kind of appears out of nowhere, right?
It literally appeared out of nowhere.
Literally.
They drop them on the street.
Correct. They drop them on the street. In fact, I saw actually a guy I know pretty well riding one down a sidewalk yesterday. And I kind of looked over and was a little bit taken aback.
Not supposed to be on the sidewalk either.
And didn't have a helmet on, right? Yeah. So I think it comes back to common sense, right? We want to make it safe for pedestrians, users, and I think it makes sense to build some regulations around that.
Clearly, we've seen other cities, Cambridge, Boston, others say, no, hold up, slow down.
Yeah.
And in the absence here, kids are whipping around, and if someone gets hurt, I mean, there could be some serious legal consequences.
No question about it, right? It's tragic. The young boy who died in I think it was Bristol, the last week or the week before, right? These things happen in the blink of an eye. It could be a teenager, it could be a child, it could be an adult. There's a lot going on, particularly in the city. As you know, you work downtown, pedestrians, there's just a lot going on in the city, buses. So yeah, I think it makes sense to again, slow it down. Let's see what makes sense. Obviously, that's an issue for city leaders, but I got to believe they're concerned about it.
Well, we'll see what happens moving forward, and obviously keeping an eye on your campaign. You're going around, you're meeting, you're talking with people. What can we expect from you in the next few weeks on the trail?
Yeah, just keep working hard. I'm getting all over the state. One thing that comes back to me, Kate, as I do this is how diverse our state is. I mean, you can be in Central Falls and Cumberland the same day or on different days and just see a very different tapestry of what is Rhode Island. That is our strength. I love that about Rhode Island. I saw some of that as U.S. Attorney. I've seen more of it as a candidate. I'm going to just keep working really hard to meet as many Rhode Islanders as I can. And I think the biggest part of this is, and again, it's a lesson from when I was U.S. Attorney. You got to listen to people. I have my ideas of what I like to do with the office, but to put those ideas in context, I got to listen to what Rhode Island residents think. So, I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing for the last 10 months, and hopefully we'll get there in the end.
Okay, well, Peter Neronha, I appreciate your taking the time
Thanks,
to come
Kate.
into the
Yeah,
studio.
good to see you.
Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back here in the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center.